The digging system was my first target when starting up development for my new game, Fossil Keeper. It's where the player will start their journey, so I'll make it the start of mine. Fossil Keeper is my next game project, where you dig up dinosaur fossils, assemble skeletons, and display them in your museum. It has a Steam page, and if you wish to know more, check out my introduction video for the game. What I had so far is this prototype, with a grid-based system implemented, with removal of blocks by clicking. Very simplistic, but allowed me to mess around with the look and feel of the digging system. The prototype is very static and hard-coded, so the first step was to make it flexible. The size of the dig sites will need to vary, as well as the colours and style of the dirt, rock, and scenery around them. So that's the first thing I did, changing the system to allow any dig site size and colour. I also felt that the camera angle was too shallow to see the deeper parts of the rock, so I changed that to be top-down and added movement and zoom controls. The plan is for there to be unlockable digging upgrades, making the digging radius larger. So next I worked on getting the blue hover highlight to better represent the digging area. With a couple of failed attempts at this, I got it working, using temporary keyboard keys to increase and decrease the size of the digging radius. Once that was done, making it so it actually digs that expanded area was fairly simple, but I had one main issue. You could dig under blocks that weren't dug yet, and I certainly didn't want to allow this. By doing this, you could also reach over from one hole and dig blocks from another, which doesn't feel right. So I needed to restrict what blocks would be diggable, starting with not showing the hover highlight of blocks that are already dug. Then I attempted adding more complex restrictions, making it so you can only dig blocks that are within reach of the block being hovered over, which wasn't working too well here, but I managed to get it almost perfect if it wasn't for these diagonals. This was because I was using ray marching to tell if a block can be seen from the center block, and only allowing it to be dug if it can. But this was allowing diagonal blocks to be seen. So then I switched to using a pathfinding method, where if the block can be reached by a path from the center, and that path isn't too long, then it can be dug. A lot better. Now it was time to make the digging look and feel more, well, like digging. To start, I drew up a series of crack overlays. My goal here was to make them tileable in all 4 directions and to avoid the corners as they may be cut out. I made the cracks show in the dirt when clicked on to demonstrate how they will look. I wasn't too happy with how they looked though, so I went back to GIMP and redesigned them to be larger and less chaotic, with them radiating from the center. In game they looked a lot better, if a bit comical, which I think serves the style I'm going for well. They looked even better when I implemented digging progression, with the player having to hold down the mouse until the digging is done. The cracks increase in intensity with each digging tick. In my next iteration, I increased the rate of these digging ticks, and added some much needed sound effects. Sounds good to me. Next was adding dirt particle effects that change colour based on the dirt dug. Then the final touch was adding this subtle shake to the cracks as they dig. A bit of simple sound and special effects really go a long way to improve the feel and feedback of a gameplay action. I may tweak the digging in the future, but I'm really happy with how I've made it so far. All this digging and we haven't found any fossils, which would certainly disappoint the player, so my next focus was to add them, which involved me creating these fossil blocks in Blender. The idea is that there will be a variety of generic fossil blocks of differing sizes, based on the species and bone types they are. So here we have blocks for a small species head and limbs. Once all blended up, I got them embedded into the dirt grid. They will be randomly placed when the dig site maps are generated, but for now, they are hard-coded to be in these positions and orientations. My initial idea was that the fossils are uncovered by digging the blocks above them, but I changed my mind and thought it might be nicer if the fossils were within the blocks that needed to be dug out. Like this. You can see the bones sticking out of the dirt that is yet to be dug out, which I think is a really nice touch. Next I allowed the fossils to be clicked on once fully uncovered, which will pull them out with a swooshy sound effect and dirt particles. This grey background is a bit dull, so it was time to bring back the terrain that surrounds the dig site. The dig site can vary in size though, so I had to take this into account and make the terrain fit dynamically. As you can see here in the editor view, there are 4 ground meshes that are designed to be overlapped nicely. They can be moved in the code to match the edges of the dig site grid. As I can show off, I'm making the grid size larger, which will let me show you the size for the largest dig sites I have planned. You definitely need to upgrade your digging for this. Plants and rocks on this terrain would be nice, so I created a random spawn system to allow me to adjust how many objects to spawn on the terrain, and how close they can get to each other. Bigger objects would have a larger spawn radii, ensuring they don't overlap. Once I was happy with how this is working, I got desert-based plants and rocks spawning in, tweaking in their radius and spawn chance. This really makes it feel more alive, like we're actually outside digging in the ground. The very last change was to adjust the block's colours to match the surrounding terrain. This looked nice, but it made it harder to see where you can dig, so instead I made it a little bit brighter. Well, that's the digging system working and feeling just how I imagined. In the future there will be a multitude of environment types to find these dig sites in, which I'll be able to simulate by changing the colour of the dirt and rock as well as varying the plants. Next I'll implement the randomly generated maps that you'll be able to explore and find these dig sites in. So subscribe if you're interested in catching the next devlog, and I'll see you next time.